want it to be. This is a much anticipated conversation. Rio's going to present about 60 minutes of his philosophy and his take and his vision of what we need to be aware of coming forward. But then we're going to have an interactive discussion. Like, I think some of us will have some questions. I already have some questions, even though we haven't even finished. Yeah.
You started.
Haven't even started, right? Just so everyone knows, the curtains are the bathroom. And if you, for some reason, want to leave early, you're going to go down the back way. Yeah, we're gonna block off the front because we're doing a videotape of this. And if you want a copy of the YouTube that we're going to make, just be sure when you leave, we have your email downstairs or your WhatsApp, and we'll send it to you, and you can share it with your friends. That's enough out of me. Without further ado, my friend Helmi.
Thank you, Scott.
As I said, I need to be honest about this. I'm in no way an expert on AI. So please, if you have any illusions about that and you just want to say, oh God, and go away, that's fine. I understand. I completely understand. I am exploring it. And I approach this from a point of view of two things. A certain naive curiosity, and also from the perspective of Buddhist thought. I mean, not necessarily Buddhist morality or whatever, but mainly, Buddhist. From my perspective, there's several concerns that I have about AI, and I'm a photographer, and I don't really want to present it from the photography point of view because that's something which has been looked at, and people have been interacting with that for a long time. But I just want to talk about the human mind. So I wrote here, the human mind and its patterns upon which the so-called artificial intelligence is more or less based is an amazing thing. It has the capacity to evolve and improve continuously, though obviously that's contingent on on motivation. So the current AI systems which are in use are more accurately described as large language models. They're statistical pattern processors. They process patterns, and they accumulate and process vast amounts of data. They refine their outputs based on user prompts, which we know, and detected patterns. It personalizes, if I can use that word, its output according to not only individual prompts, but once the user has interacted, actually a relationship. It starts to get to know you, and so forth and so forth. I would like to just read you something which is quite hilarious. My wife asked it, we were playing around. She said, how can I deal with, my husband and develop patience with my husband? And so it answers. It says, cultivate loving presence. Listen deeply. When he speaks, pause what you're doing, look into his eyes, and listen without planning your response. Feeling heard is one of the greatest gifts. Be mindful of tone. Even in small things, a warm tone conveys love more than the words themselves. I have no argument with this whatsoever, actually, by the way. And then 2, practice patience, which is great. Pause before reacting. When you feel irritation, breathe deeply and count to 3. Often what feels urgent softens with a little space. Choose compassion over being right. Ask yourself, what does he need in this moment? Comfort, encouragement, or silence? Show kindness in small gestures, etc., etc. And it goes on and on. And then finally at the bottom it says, would you like me to create for you a daily ritual or reminder, like a morning or evening practice, to help you embody this patience and loving presence with Rio? Damn, it knows my name. And all this has come about because all has been using ChatGPT for a long time and convincing me to try it, and I try it out once in a while, and But because she translates for me when I'm teaching Buddhism, she translates for Ukrainian and Russian audiences. So there's been many questions over the past few years, and a lot of it has to do with where she's trying to find, because some translations in Russian or Ukrainian, or many Russian, they're not actually always synchronous with the English translation. So she would ask, okay, what verse number is that for the Russian speakers? with their text. And so it got to know all the texts that it was just, we deal with the standard curriculum. There's the Shantideva, Lamrim, blah, 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 blah. So it pulled all this stuff out of that bank. And because she mentioned my name once, it says AI just came up with this thing. And ChatGPT recalled a previous conversation months ago when she mentioned my name and was mentioned in the context of work. So it's mimicking human intuition. It doesn't know human intuition, but it mimics it. And in the future, we're going to have much more broader mimicking of intuition. And for this next level, we call AGI, Artificial General Intelligence, which is able to not just focus on the data that is collected from one particular source. It's going to be able to go right across all domains and just, and it pull it together. It's again, as I said, it's a mimicry of what we do when we jump from one thing to that and pull things together. The thing is, whether we like this large language model we call AI or not, that's a matter of personal taste, as I said. However, regardless of that, we cannot deny that AI advances at a relentless pace, and more of the 8 billion human beings on this planet are either in or entering into a close and very pervasive interaction with this thing. So if you wanted to define AI, essentially it's what you call a complicated operation. Complicated refers to difficult problems which are solvable using systems and processes which can parse information and factors using what we call hierarchical structures. Okay, that's what it does. The human mind is complex. The human mind has to do with sentience, but it's more than that's just one part. There's a vastness in the human mind in general. You look at psychologists. Psychologists talk about the subconscious. Yeah, what's that? In Buddhism, the subconscious has a whole another encyclopedic thing. In Buddhism, we talk about the constantly changing and flowing mind stream, which it's karmic traces, it's causes and conditions. The mind in Buddhism is not a static thing. It comes from a moment of mind before it and from input into it, and it's constantly changing, constantly moving, and it carries traces. It's very complex, super complex. And for that reason, it's also very hard for a normal consciousness or a structural approach like AI to actually predict what's coming up. It's impossible almost for it to do that. When we talk about the mind in Buddhism, the emphasis is that, like all other phenomena, how Buddhism sees other phenomena, the mind depends on causes and conditions to function. Actually, in Buddhism, all phenomena, functioning is the mode of all phenomena. It's not that they are inherently existing phenomena that are doing functions. It's a functional thing. It's just something that's, the table is there, you've got the table made of wood, it comes from causes and conditions and so forth, and then after a while you use it, but that's all it is. There's not more than that. It is not a table, that created itself and functioned as, it doesn't work that way. So it's not static, it's not monolithic, the mind is not like an eternal thing. It's constantly changing. But even more startling, from the Buddhist perspective, not only is the stream of mind never ending, but the pure awareness that is mind actually has the capacity to become omniscient, and that's kind of mind-blowing. Omniscient means to know everything. It has that capacity. All-knowing, which is essentially the definition of a Buddha. In order to do this, to get there, it requires the removal of all obstructions to this awareness. That's the basic, if you would like, the basic concept, according to certain levels of philosophy in Buddhism. What would these obstructions be? The primary obstruction would be the misapprehension of the true nature of all phenomena, not understanding the true nature of all phenomena. So, to be brief, what misapprehension means in this context is assuming and grasping at phenomena to be something static, to be inherently and independently existing. And it's simply not that way. Okay, so this state of misapprehension is what Buddhists call ignorance. It's very different from in the Western languages, or even Eastern languages. If you say ignorance in a Western context, it means, oh, I don't know the name of such and such, or I don't know the process of applying for a visa. Oh, you're ignorant of that. That's not the Buddhist definition of ignorance. The Buddhist definition of ignorance is the darkness of the mind. The mind is obstructed. It simply cannot understand the true nature of things. So this thing about obstruction and inability to understand things as they are, then there are other obstructions. There are secondary obstructions to the clarity of the mind, which are coming from that darkness because you misapprehend things and you react in the wrong way, etc. And so that results in flawed and often destructive interactions with our world and the phenomena around us under that influence. And one of these flaws is the lack of empathy, reduced empathy. You can't really feel this thing. And the weird thing is, of course, this state of ignorance doesn't prevent our ability to function, but it's just that they don't function. Our ability to function isn't optimal. Sometimes it's so bad that it becomes actually dysfunctional, which is even more extreme. It's kind of like, I'm sorry, I like to use these motor vehicle metaphors. It's like having a 4-cylinder car that's only running on 2 cylinders. You're not quite going to. And this is really interesting because the seduction of AI is because it functions optimally. Or at least it gets closer and closer to it every day. So ignoring that would be a mistake. So I read this piece by this professor, Graham Burnett, and he's a historian of science and technology in these Ivy League universities. And he says, AI is like the juggernaut that's bearing down on us while we're kind of trying to kind of ignore it, to not really acknowledge it, understand it. And he puts it that way. And in his New Yorker article, which is called Will the Humanities Survive Artificial Intelligence? He has many, what he calls conversations with AI. So he interacts with it and he calls them conversations, gives them prompts and gives back, and they get into deeper conversations. And I'm quoting now. He says, the astonishing part is this. The making of books such as those on my shelves, each the labor of years or decades, is quickly becoming a matter of well-designed prompts. The question is no longer whether we can write such books. They can be written endlessly for us. The question is, do we want to read them? That's quite a statement, because that hooks back into the whole, empathy. Because some part of the human subconscious recognizes when something is coming from artificiality. It recognizes it, it feels it, understands it. So, getting back, let's examine that statement that AI functions optimally or is rapidly getting there. So what it does, actually, it collates information, processes, and analyzes without any ability to truly feel and have a deeper understanding of the significance of its findings. It can identify feeling and reactions from the data it collates, but doesn't experience them. For example, it cannot experience empathy for itself. So it ends up having this kind of amoral value system. This is where the issue arises. It's amoral. And so what Burnett, this guy, did, is he did this because in the Ivy League in America, apparently, it's a big no-no to use AI. And so all the students are scared of using AI because you can get thrown out of university for using it. If you get busted, that's, So everybody was scared of it. And he said, no, we're going to do this experiment. And he got all the students from different disciplines to interact. And, this deep interaction that's going on and on. One of his students is a music major. Says, after drawing out a series of analytic accounts of what makes music beautiful, he asked whether the bot could experience beauty. It said, no, not really. though it knew a lot about how people have tried to put this experience into words. It knew that, well, these people trying to describe beautiful music. So when Paolo asks if it could have an emotional relationship to a song, the system carefully distinguished between recognizing emotion in music and actually feeling it. It said it lacked a body, and this absence of a body barred it from certain ways of knowing music. That was his excuse. It was very interesting, how it came up with that. And I start running paragraphs from my article as I'm writing it through ChatGPT to see its reactions. So I start having this conversation with ChatGPT. And for this last section on the mind, this is what it said. I see. You've extended your text into deeper reflection, weaving together Buddhist philosophy, psychology, and AI critique. It's coherent, but a little dense in places. So I'll give you a clear read on the strengths and some refinements that could make it flow like a polished essay. This is his mission in life, is to make everything come out smoothly and like that. So here it is, the strength. Rich layering, psychology, subconscious, Buddhism, mindstream, ignorance, omniscience, AI critique, compelling triangulation. It's just making these judgments based on what it is. And it goes on. But, as it runs through this stuff, I realize actually, and it says, humans versus machine. You illustrate where AI falls short. No experience of empathy, beauty, or embodiment. Interesting. It's telling me, this thing. And so, and then I ran the part about functioning optimally, and it says, you describe AI as optimal, but then critique that claim. To avoid mixed signals, frame it clearly. AI appears to function optimally, but only within narrow, predefined domains. Okay. Now, you've probably seen that, and you can notice that I have a certain inflection when I'm reading what AI is putting out. So I'm having a human reaction to this. I'm kind of, I have to admit, I'm kind of almost dissing it, but I'm not really. I'm kind of curious about it, but it's so mechanical in a way, but so refined that I can't help but, read it that way. So, and then here I go back to my thing. So it's clearly not an emotional reaction that AI has. Or, now we have a question. In the future with AGI, will it actually display an emotion of some kind? Okay, because it's going across all these domains. Well, who here has seen, probably some of the older ones, the film 2001: Space Odyssey? Remember what Hal just says? Hal just ignores the shutdown orders, And apparently, this has happened with modern AI. There have been recorded instances where certain bots just ignored shutdown orders. So I have no idea whether that was a glitch or, who knows? I mean, the astronaut, couldn't figure out whether it was a glitch or not. Remember in Space Odyssey, I just kind of keep going on and on into space. And so please note that in referring to the interactions that Burnett and his students had with AI, he calls them conversations. In its responses to questions and prompts, ChatGPT answers in the first person and with a polite manner. Who here has never interacted with AI? Has anybody here not interacted with ChatGPT? Everybody has, right? You haven't? Oh, you have a whole new experience ahead of you. And it's easy, it's free. So it's really interesting how it's been programmed to be polite and to answer you in the first person. What would you like me to do? Would you like me to kind of condense this whole thing? And obviously this is the programming, but for me, I'm a beginner. It creates the eerie feeling that there's, it's like somebody trying to impersonate somebody else. And you get that feeling with it. It's trained to do that. And if you look at the tone that it took and the response that it gave to my wife, Ola, when she asked ChatGPT how to develop patience with her husband, positing him as sometimes difficult, which is of course not true at all, it's not difficult at all. And so, or alternatively, look at the way it responded to my request to review the text that I had written in a very, very subtle way, a very super subtle way. And you can correct me, you just raise my hand and tell me I'm wrong. But in a subtle way, in a quiet way, it sort of poses as an authority. Whether that's just a conflation of its programming that I'm considering that. But it does come across as some kind of authority, and I think that that's only my perception of it. And this is the thing. What happens with AI is we're constantly projecting onto it, and it's coming back at us. It's projecting onto it, coming back to us. And so if you read that and you didn't know it came from AI, you'd say, oh, gee, I wonder which Buddhist master gave her this advice. So it's come across as this, wise authority. And why I'm talking about this is nothing new to you, I'm sure. But this kind of thing, this kind of seduction, has already created what we call AI-induced psychosis. We have these situations, and many of you probably read that. So you progress from like an increasing confidence in the unerring veracity, the unerring, truth of what AI programs spit out. And then if in the psychosis model, you start ascribing an independent, inherent existence of some kind of person. It's a mind that is not just a program, And we have, Scott and I discussed different versions. I think it's the same story that has been told in different ways, urban myths. I've never been able to confirm the story about this. Has anybody ever heard or confirmed the story about this guy who committed suicide to be with his AI-generated device? Now, that I've never had a confirmation on from a source that I would, I don't know. Did you?
I read about it. In my case, it was a child.
Okay.
We had like an avatar, whatever.
Right.
And this avatar said, "I'm meeting on the other side."
Right.
Was
the other side was that's the phrase. So I think it's an urban myth which has been propagated on the child, on the old man. Oh, Scott told me the story of the old man who had the same story. So there are different things, and I think that these, if I'm going to be totally honest, I think some of these urban myths are generated by our own insecurity.
Well, I don't know.
Well, I've never seen a confirmation of that from.
Because nowadays you could have a wife or a husband, AI.
Yes.
And I just heard a report or read a report that when something is wrong or stopped or whatever, people go in psychological problems.
Yes. I mean, that's a different thing. But this, I think that for sure must happen. It's the same thing. It's addiction. It's like TikTok. They discovered TikTok was destroying teenage girls' lives because they were obsessed with the image of being, slender and blah blah and perfect and all this sort of stuff. Definitely, we interact with something, we react to it, and we project onto it. But I'm just saying, I've never heard any confirmation of these, suicide stories. But this phrase of going to the other side has come up in almost every one of these stories. So there is that kind of, we have, and I think, yes, we do have to be careful, but not for those, not really. I think the psychosis aspect of it it's more isolated or less prevalent. Also very possible that simply being able to create code and prompts that would be tempting for the creator of that set on those codes, it would be tempting to propagate chaos or misuse it for personal political gain. And we've seen this too, So Burnett ran one of his most extensive courses. It's I told you, it's 900-page blah, blah, blah. And 30 minutes, it came back, his 900-page course, which he developed, it came back in 30 minutes from Notebook, the Google's free AI tool, Notebook. And it came back in a resume in the form of a dialogue, a man and a woman talking to each other. And he listened to it, he said, oh yeah, that's okay. And then by the end of it, he's going, oh, wow, parts of it, it wasn't even, they wasn't all brilliant, but parts of it were really amazing. And he said in his articles, it's like, well, thinking about it, if I had written that code and that could do that with my 900-page course, I might feel a dangerous sense of mastery. So there's this aspect of the person who's actually creating it, feeling, this incredible, immense power and being seduced by this power, which brings us to Elon Musk and that whole the scenario of taking over the U.S. government and doing whatever, and because and all that chaos And the experts, they were upbeat. They thought, oh, we don't need all those people. We don't need those experts who've had those years of experience. Oh, we can do it with these young guys. We can do it with AI. We can do it with that. No. It's not really working out too well. In Bali itself, our governor, Costa, this is his second term now, but in his first term, he was governor during the pandemic. And he had this inner circle. You couldn't get past this inner circle. And I was part of a task force with the government disaster mitigation and 40 NGOs, and we all have different tasks. My task was observation, going around the island, checking on things. And I finally thought, this is ridiculous. This whole thing of, sending people to hotels, remote hotels to be quarantined. There has to be a way where they can quarantine people in the villages or in their homes in a safe manner. So I went to see the students of an old friend of mine in Udayana, who are now these students actually already PhDs, who are students of public health. And I said to one of them, who became a friend of mine, Dr. Pandey Janarag, I said, listen, we need to create a PDF that can be transmitted electronically, can be sent to all the villages, to all the Bachalan, and explaining how people can quarantine their families in their houses safely, so they don't have to go through this trauma and expense of being, going to, it was insane, These are miserable places, these hotels where they all didn't know what to do with themselves. And they said, yeah, great. So he and about 8 of his fellow, they were already PhDs. They took about 4 days and they put together a very, very comprehensive, really, an excellent little PDF. And I said, okay, somebody's got to bring it to the governor. You're the public health guy. I mean, if I show up, the governor says, they're not even going to let me in the door, right? So I said, okay. So he goes along, and in the governor's inner circle, the guy who's the head of the medical aspect is a clinical medical doctor. He's a lung expert. They haven't even figured out that clinical medicine and public health medicine are actually 2 different disciplines, completely different. So he goes there, he goes along, and he gets shunted to the governor's IT expert, who is also part of the inner circle of 4 people who advise the governor. I don't know where he got these people. This IT guy sits down, Pandey. He says, "Listen, I've got 40 minutes. Can you just explain the whole principles of public health to me so I can, I can put this in the program and give it to the governor?" And Pandey looked at him and says, "Yeah, I spent 8 years getting my PhD, and you want me to compress this into a 40-minute talk?" And Pandey was not your average Balinese. He just said, "Nah, I'm done." And what was the point? We'd create this PDF, we'd send it along to them, they wanted somebody to come, and then, he sends them to the IT guy who wants them to explain everything in 40 minutes because he's some AI whiz, early AI whiz, there was the early beginnings. So there's that kind of danger with this thing. And now in China, there's a new mandate that beginning this fall, all children age 6 and up must learn AI. So they're going to get programmed. Because they'll now AI will be like their companion. So Jeffrey Hinton, he's ex-Google and he's one of the godfathers of deep learning, and he's warning a lot about things about AI. So he talks about misinformation, social manipulation. It can make convincing fake text, images, and videos. Makes it hard for the public to tell the truth from fabrication. And he says, it's hard to see how you can prevent bad actors from using it for bad things. Well, we've seen that already. Job disruption. This was the whole thing that happened with Trump in the first, when Elon Musk went rampant. Knowledge-based work like translation, legal assistance, and creative fields. What AI doesn't do, it doesn't learn from its experiences. It just collates and processes and produces the information. It doesn't have the relationship with them. And he's saying, which is a bit scary here, is that the timeline for such disruption might be much shorter than we're ready for. That's the juggernaut that Bernard was talking about, coming down. And then the loss of control and AI outsmarting us. Hinton fears that as these systems become more autonomous and capable, they could start pursuing objectives misaligned with human values. I'm not going to say that this AI becomes sentient, but it's a program thing, and it could be easily programmed to do that. Why not? And there's this idea that the stuff could actually get smarter than people. A few people believe that. And I thought it was way off. But I thought it was 30, 50 years. Obviously, I no longer think that. And he thinks that, I don't know, this is a bit, okay, super intelligent AI could, in the worst case scenario, okay, we're talking about, what's the Terminator series here. And interestingly enough, he says AI is harder to regulate than nuclear weapons because it's software and can be replicated easily. So then I ran, okay, you read all that. Then I ran some questions through ChatGPT itself. What's the future? It says more human-like intelligence. Systems that can learn and reason across domains. We're not here yet. Okay, blah, blah, blah. I think that's it. But do you remember earlier I said how AI is amoral, and that's the problem. How do you instill an ethical system into a system that's becoming more and more independent and self-sufficient? That's the big question. And what should those ethical limitations be? Because people, even in many countries, are discussing this now. They're saying like it's too late, but we have to do this now. We have to start talking about the ethical questions here.